Welcome to Inspired Living with Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. Every Wednesday, Marc, along with his special guests, will explore thought-provoking topics and ideas that promote creativity, self-help, healing, happiness, and well-being to inspire you on your spiritual journey. Each week, Marc will discuss different paths to achieving a more spiritual, balanced, happy, and healthy lifestyle. Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience and all things spiritual. Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. Marc is a tested, certified, and professional spiritual medium, metaphysical teacher, healer, and spiritual advisor with a spiritual practice based in Seattle, Washington. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be in this magical, magnanimous, magnificent, majestic, marvelous, metaphysical, miraculous, mind-awakening, mind-boggling, and mind-blowing planet of ours. This is Inspired Living Radio. I am your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, here with yet again for another soul adventure, an inspiring episode to explore, discuss, and discover the many diamonds within each and every one of us and the many diamonds in our world that have yet to be revealed. So get comfortable, grab your favorite drink, kick back, sit back, or lie back, take in a nice, deep, healing, peaceful, and cleansing breath, and let us prospect together as we discuss today's show topic about the origin of consciousness. We're going to talk about meditation. We're going to talk about empathy. And we're going to just take the next hour to explore and discover, or what I like to say, explore and discover through mind, body, and spirit. So I want to give a big shout out and thank you to all of our inspired listeners from around the globe, the universe, and beyond. My team and I here at Inspired Living Radio are so very humbled and grateful to you for listening, downloading, subscribing, leaving reviews, and voting to make Inspired Living Podcast a best 100 ranked inspirational show to follow and listen to for the last 3 years running. I just want to say we do appreciate you. If you have not yet subscribed, liked, or followed the show, there's a few ways to do this over our main social media platforms at Facebook, which is called Inspired Living Radio and Podcasts, Instagram and Twitter under Inspired for Us, our YouTube channel, Inspired Living Radio, and I've made a new podcasting list with all of our past 8 seasons that you can go to. So if you're in the mood for medicine, meditation, inspiration, today's consciousness, and you can pick all these different shows. And I want to let everybody know that we're also now streaming through, if you have an Alexa or Echo Pod at home, you can now just say, Alexa, open Inspired Living Podcast, and you'll get our latest episode. So with that, I always like to say, dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover that diamond within. And for all you inspired listeners out there, for those that stopped by my expo this weekend, thank you so much for stopping by, giving me a birthday hug, celebrating Earth Day with me, attending my lectures and demonstrations. I really appreciate you. So with that, I like to say, you are the inspired and the inspiration. Be inspired, inspire others, inspire before we expire. Are we ready to go prospecting? Let's take in a nice deep breath and let's go. All right. So today we're going to talk about consciousness. This is something we did have a guest that was going to be on today, but unfortunately they had to reschedule. So I was thinking about what I could talk about and share with the inspired listening community here. And I'm just going to, let me just turn this down here. Got a little bit of background noise that's coming in, so I apologize for that. So I want to start off the show with a quote from Albert Einstein. And he talked about this. A human being is part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts, his feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. And that was from the great Albert Einstein. So we're going to talk today about the origin of consciousness. It's something that I have, in my journey, have long been fascinated with and trying to understand consciousness and where consciousness stems from. And what I did is I recently made some recordings. So I'm a lifestyle consultant and a professional directory, and they have me do inspirational tips. They have me, uh, they do, I'm trying to figure out why I'm getting TV background here. Um, let's see here. So I do apologize. We've got some TV coming in somewhere. I'm just trying to figure out where that's coming in. Um, okay, there we go. Okay, so I was doing some recording tips called Positive Living Tips, and you can also stream this through your Alexa or Echo Pod if you have one in your house, and you just say, Alexa, open up Positive Living. And I thought today would be a opportunity to share some of those content reminders that I shared with through Positive Living. So it's in correlation with Inspired Living, just a different way to get spiritual tips from me and recorded over the last few years. So I want to talk about consciousness today. And the origin of consciousness is one of the great unanswered questions of our time. Although science has yet to come up with a definitive explanation, it is clear that we can raise our own state of consciousness. And what then is the best method for doing this? How to some refer to it as a blending, to raise your vibrational energy up, to become attuned, to expand. Some of you may know it as the word ascension, to ascend, to transform. And there's many different ways to get to this, all those words that I just said. But for me, it's been about meditation. Now, for those of you that follow the show and have followed my work, you know that I learned to meditate in college. It wasn't something that I did even after my turbulent times. I had a part of my life in my mid 20s where my father-in-law, both my brothers, passed into spirit within the year time frame. It was actually quite traumatic, and I call that the TNT, the trauma and the tragedy that blew my life up. And it was years after that, we're talking murder, we're talking brain cancer, we're talking multiple sclerosis, all young family members at the young ages of 21, 35, and 47. Now, we all have a story to tell. I just didn't know that my story would move me into to explore and to prospect for spiritualism, psychic sciences, mediumship, healing, transformations, and of course, meditation. So it wasn't until a few years after the tragedies had unfolded and we had gone through a lot as a family, including a televised murder trial. Being a part of that with paparazzi was not something that I was, personally had ever been involved with. And so it was very eye opening. But I also know, now that I'm a little bit older in life and have gone around the sun a few more times, death comes to us all. And it's just a matter of not if, but when. And for me, it just came at a more younger age than I expected. So a lot of times, since then, I've had family members pass away, friends pass away, fur babies pass away. It's part of the process. And when you realize that death is not the end, death is just a new journey, or as Rod Stewart talked about in his some of his lyrics, and he talked about not believing in death anymore. And to him, it was like getting out of one car, opening up a door to another, and getting in that car and going on another adventure. So John Lennon also talked about death a lot, and I thought it was always interesting how these songwriters and very popular musicians would talk about death and dying. So I know from just some of my readings as I started to learn about meditation, it was through meditation that I started to realize consciousness, my consciousness to myself, consciousness to the world around me, consciousness to my spiritual journey that I was about to go on, that I didn't realize that was going to be a thing. And I remember reading a little bit of Henry David Thoreau, for all of you bookworms out there. And he always said this: I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by conscious endeavor. And when I read that before, it didn't have a lot of meaning to me. It didn't have substance. It didn't ring true. But after the period of my life with the traumas and the tragedies, it blew my life up and really had me rethinking everything. I really went back and read some of the writings of some great spiritual teachers, some great authors in our history. And reading that again, I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man and women to elevate their lives by conscious endeavors. So, what is a conscious endeavor? For me, it was the power of meditation. So, it was the course I was taking in my graduate studies for sports medicine. I was actually going uh, down a different path. I was getting ready to retire from the fire service as a professional firefighter EMT, and I was going to the University of Washington. And I thought, wow, what am I going to do when I grow up? And I wanted to work in sports. I love sports. If you follow my journey and my work, you know that I love sports. It's a great way to participate in society in a civil way, to embrace that energy and that excitement. And with excitement comes, loss, which comes pain and heartache, of course. But I've always been a part of sports. I played sports in high school and college. After college, played in recreational leagues, and still to this day, try to get out and shoot a few hoops if I can. But I was taking sports medicine and human performance here at the University of Washington, and I was getting to the end of the program, and there was a course called visualization. Let's see if I get this right. Visualization, manifestation, and meditation for the professional athlete. It was really a focus on what professional athletes do to get into the zone. It really had nothing to do with spiritualism. And I tell this story because the professor that was teaching the course, he had come up from Stanford University on loan to give us this insight, to give us this teaching modality of visualization, manifesting, meditation. Three words I was not really aware of. I had heard about them through my grieving counseling. I had heard about them through my biofeedback sessions, because at this time I was also exploring, my own grief, and to honor my grief and the power of mourning and what that all meant with the loss of my brothers and my father-in-law. And so I was really kept seeing these words of visualization and manifestation and consciousness, but most importantly, meditation. And so what we did is we spent a whole semester dedicated to meditation. And there was different forms of meditation. Now, we didn't get in, special clothing. We didn't get into certain positions. We didn't have a meditation mat. Well, at one point we did. We actually sat on the floor to become aware of what it's like to sit on the floor at a university. So we did walking meditations. We did deep breathing meditations. We did muscle tension release meditations. And that's where you really tighten up your body and you kind of tense up and then you release. And there was just a lot of comfort that came from that. So we would go out and do walking meditations. We'd go out and touch nature meditations. Now, after the quarter ended, after the semester was done, we had a conversation, and he was actually a spiritualist. He actually worked in spiritualism, but he just couldn't actually teach that for the curriculum under the University of Washington guidelines. So we got into some very in-depth conversations, which only just fascinated me even more to go prospecting even deeper. And it was through this course, and this would have been back in 2008 is when I finished up. So it's been some years ago. But through the power of meditation, raising my state of consciousness, raising my own state of consciousness and my awareness to things that are not necessarily seen, it was through the power of meditation that I actually started to become aware of the consciousness and the mannerisms and the energy and the memories of my brothers, where I was actually starting to have conversations, not just in the physical waking world, but in my dreamscapes. I was having all sorts of dreams, would wake up, and I would have these insights of why are my brothers talking to me? They're supposed to be gone. They're supposed to be, they've transitioned, they've died. Why are they coming back to talk to me? And so what that did is that through the power of meditation, it opened up this door that had been dormant. Now, some of you that are listening to the show, some of you are born naturally with these gifts. Others of us that come to this come through, great trauma or tragedies or a near-death experience. And I forgot to mention that same year at the age of 27, I had my first near-death experience in a river accident. So for me, it was all these things that had been bottled up: the death, the dying, the loss. I was the last brother in the physical world, watching my family go through the heartache, my parents go through having to bury two sons, my wife watching to have her father pass away from a horrible disease, multiple sclerosis. They're all horrible. Murder, brain cancer, multiple sclerosis, they're all horrible. But what that did is it started to transform my consciousness. It started to bring into my awareness and my focus such words as visualizations, manifestations, meditation, empathy. And I'll talk a little bit later in the show about empathy, because a lot of people think empathy is just feeling sorry for somebody, and there's so much more in depth to that concept. And at that time, there was a lot of people expressing a lot of empathy. Uh, you know, sending their condolences, feeling sorry for me. Some people actually moved away from our family, and some of my friends and colleagues moved away because they thought, as a family, maybe we're cursed to have such traumatic events, such bad events happen. And that's unfortunately, just ignorance and not being educated, but it was the experience nonetheless. So, what we're going to talk about today in today's episode is the origin of consciousness, because again, science cannot come to a conclusion of exactly where consciousness comes from and why it's here, and then what happens after we move on. Because when we move on, the energy in our hearts, from an anatomy and physiology standpoint, the laws of physics does tell us that energy always has to travel somewhere. So that energy that's making your heart beat right now has to move forward when it leaves the physical incarnated body, the physical flesh suit, as we like to say, and it moves to that next state. So we'll get after we're going to take our first break here, and when we come back from our first break, we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth about meditation, visualization, manifestation, empathy, and by making you, in a very real sense, more conscious of the world around you. Meditation does many things. It heightens your awareness, it deepens your thought levels, it boosts your sensory perception, it increases stimuli processing capability, not to mention a limitless number of other emotional, physical, and psychological benefits. And I'm going to share some of those things with you after we take our first break and when we come back here in just a few minutes. So stick around. You're listening to Inspired Living, where we like to say you are the inspired and the inspiration. We'll be back in 2.
The future of internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
One planet, 7.3 billion people, only one you. Life offers us many opportunities and learning experiences. Are you ready to explore and discover this beautiful planet, the life and energy all around us, the spiritual world, and what is unseen, along with your own personal soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, is the spiritual connection you have been prospecting for. Internationally known as a tested and professional clairvoyant medium and spiritual advisor, Marc's work as a metaphysical teacher, medical instructor, radio show host, inspirational writer, and hiking guide are here to help you on a journey of self-discovery, healing, inspiration, education, and a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. Dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live. For more information on Marc's spiritual practice in Seattle, Washington, please visit marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing a job
and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Inspired Living. I'm your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. Today we are talking about the origin of consciousness. We're exploring and going deeper and prospecting through body, mind, and spirit, and going to just lay out some topics of discussion. I always like to say I'm a spiritual buffet. There are things that I cover, I go over and share, you may subscribe to some of what I'm saying. You may not subscribe to others. That's okay. It's like if you go to a buffet, some of you may want the mashed potatoes and gravy. Others may not want the cauliflower or the broccoli or the corn on the cob. So what we like to do on Inspired Living is, encourage and motivate and inspire, of course, but just to get you to think outside the box and to think about your own journey and where you're at and how consciousness and visualization and manifestation can play a very important role in your life. If you're thinking of making a change, whether it's relationships, career, maybe you've had a similar experience like myself where you've witnessed a lot of tragedies and trauma of losing loved ones to the spirit world, but having the mindset and the knowledge and the wisdom that life is not the end, and death is not the end. It's just another way of moving consciousness forward. One of the things, as I was exploring back, like I said, I had wrapped up my college of sports medicine back in 2008 and had gotten my certificate from the University of Washington. But what was interesting is I went in a completely different way than my degree I thought I would be going. So I completed the degree, finished, had the certificate, started to look for jobs, working what I thought would be working in the sports industry, either with collegiate teams or professional teams, being on the sideline. I'd be the guy that goes out and does the working on the athletes. They sprained an ankle or, broke a bone, or this is similar to the gentleman that ran out and saved this season, the NFL football player that literally flatlined on the field, and they were able to shock him with an AED. So that's where I thought I was going, because my background is actually I'm a certified healthcare provider, so I've always worked in emergency medicine. But unbeknownst to me, the spirit world had a very different calling, and so I started to take classes, such places like the Berkeley Psychic Institute down in California. I would travel down there. I would travel over to upstate New York and Rhinebeck, New York at the awesome Omega Institute. That led me to a college over in England called the Arthur Findlay College, which is the study of spiritualism, healing, psychic sciences. Now, you notice I didn't just say psychic, I said psychic sciences, because the word psychic, if you break down the root word, a lot of people today will hear the word psychic, and in their mind, just like I did, I'm being honest and transparent here. When I started to have these awarenesses and these psychic connections and these mediumship connections to my father-in-law, to my brothers, through my near-death experience, I really was looking at those 1-800 call numbers, tell me my future, tell me the winning lottery number, tell me who, the perfect relationship that's coming. That's how I put a label to it. That's how I envisioned in it. But as I started to go deeper in the path and starting to understand through the education, which led me to knowledge, I realized there was a lot of wisdom, and it really had nothing to do with calling a 1-800 number or getting a tip for how to win the lottery, or when you're going to die. As a professional, I don't subscribe to that. I don't diagnose. I don't prescribe to other people, and I definitely am not going to tell you the winning lottery numbers or when you're going to die, because the spirit world could care less about money. We're the only species that pays to live here. And when you get ready to make your transition, that's you. That's your free will and choice. That's the, some call it the soul contracts, your agreement when you incarnate it in physical form. And I don't personally subscribe or believe that any person could tell you when you're going to pass with at least 100% accuracy. So this is where I really started to move past my own labeling and my own self-analysis of doing the work of a psychic, and learning through my teachers, through my tutors, through my mentors, and going to such places like the Omega Institute and a few other different places along the journey from that time in 2008 to now. I'm constantly learning and constantly testing myself. In fact, I've been tested several times just to understand how the brain works, the difference between prayer versus meditation versus visualization versus manifestation. In fact, I'll be traveling back over across the pond later this year, later this fall. It'll be the first time I've gone back since the global pandemic to actually do a study in the 21st century for healing in mediumship. because I learned along the path that the word psychic is of the soul. Psychosis is, which is the Greek for of the soul. It was really a journey of learning about myself, my healing, my transformations, my soul. And it was scary because it's stuff that I was not used to. I wasn't brought up in this, especially with a religious background. I was informed and taught that there was a heaven, there was a hell, and if you weren't good enough to get into either one, you kind of hung out in this purgatory. Now that doctrine's since then been changed, but it really opened me to move away from religion. And no disrespect to any of the religions, I've studied the top 10 religions around the world. I think they provide a lot of guidance and a lot of healing, and there's really good people in religion. But there's also, with everything in life, there's also not so good people in religion. And for me, it was really about unlocking the spiritual pathway. And actually, there's a few gentlemen that started to really give me that diamond within to explore, to reveal that diamond, because diamonds are created under extreme pressure. And it's a free will and choice if you want to reveal that diamond to the world and share your endeavors and your soul adventures and your experiences, or remain, keep it inside like a piece of coal in the darkness. But we know that diamonds are created with extreme pressures. And up until this point, I had some very extreme pressures, and I wanted to understand it, but also share it with others, because that was part of my transformation. That was part of my healing. And I found through psychic and mediumship, and even doing readings today, it still brings a lot of healing. It brings a lot of transformation, and it brings hope. And it brings, I use that word hope because it gives us the perspective and the image of when we move on from this physical body, that we're going to see our loved ones. We're going to have a reunion. We're going to see those that went on ahead of us, and then we'll catch up to them. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. I always tell people when I give them a reading, all I can do is share my experiences in the reading. You decide through your free will and choice if it makes sense or if it's BS. But I know that the body, again, coming back to the anatomy and physiology of what we do, and how consciousness can be explained or described, I follow a lot of different institutes. Neuroscience of consciousness from Oxford Academic could be one that comes to my mind. But also, two of the most influential people that I started on this journey, one was Don Miguel Ruiz, who has been a guest on Inspired Living. Very honored to have him a couple seasons ago talking with me about topics such as consciousness. Eckhart Tolle, who maybe one day we'll get on. I know he's a pretty busy guy. We did a show dedicated to Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk. And one of his quotes when I was doing my research for this, he says in his quotes, "In our consciousness, there are many negative seeds and also many positive seeds. The practice is to avoid watering the negative seeds and to identify and water the positive seeds every day." So that is a definition, or one of many definitions, because again, consciousness is a debatable topic based on hypothesis theory, scientific reviews, scientific method, testing, and not everyone can agree, especially in this day and age with our world. There's a lot of people that can agree. So I always come back to agree to disagree, because that just, it's your perspective. And the ability to have a strong spiritual path is the ability to shift your perspective, knowing that you're not always right. So Lao Tzu talked about this. And if you follow the works of Lao Tzu or Rumi, this goes back thousands of years. For the listeners out there, everyone, this is not new. This isn't Mark's, concept. This is just Mark sharing from his perspective and his journey and his soul adventures. And Lao Tzu talked about this, and this is another trigger for me, another gold nugget, another diamond that was like, what is this consciousness, this visualization, this manifestation, and this meditation that everyone, including professional athletes, are talking about? And Lao Tzu says this: the key to growth is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness. And then I'll actually add on to that from Eckhart Tolle, who actually in his book, The New Earth, talks about that awareness becomes the greatest agent for change. And so for me, I was like, well, what does he mean by that? So we've got Don Miguel Ruiz. I got his first book, The Four Agreements, and that was very, very helpful. There's now 5 agreements. He's added a fifth one, which is be skeptical, but learn to listen. That's the fifth agreement. And then I started to read a lot of Eckhart Tolle, a lot of Rumi, a lot of Lao Tzu, a lot of Thich Nhat Hanh. And for me, it was like, what is he talking about growth as an introduction to higher dimensions of our consciousness and bring that into our awareness? And then, on the back of my mind, I'm having conversations with my brother, Michael. He was the first to come through, and then eventually my older brother Todd started to make his presence known and have conversations with me. Now, for those of you that are hearing this, that may sound a little weird, and a little strange. I know for me, as a very working in medicine, working as a firefighter, working as a first responder, I would work from the left brain, which is more of that logic and that reasoning and that that understanding of what I see with my physical eyes. But after the events unfolded and I started to move into those dimensions to where I was hearing my brothers, I realized that we have three eyes in life: two to look with the physical eye, and then we have this third eye that lies within the center of our brain. It's called the pineal gland. I've done lots of studies and lots of workshops and classes on the pineal gland. Some say pineal, others say pineal, chakras, tomato. I always call it the pineal gland. So I'm sure somebody out there would correct me if I was saying it incorrectly, but that's just the Pacific Northwest talking me, I guess. So the pineal gland, which it goes right behind the third eye. So if you put your finger between your eyebrows, from history past, they call that the brow chakra. It's one of the many chakra systems, which are energy. Think of like a galaxy spinning within your body, like an energy hub. And it goes from the top of your head all the way down to the tips of your toes. And there's many. A lot of people talk about the 8 main chakras, but there's actually quite a few that go all the way up, multidimensional. And it's the third eye chakra, or the brow chakra, that if you put your finger and actually activate your third eye, it connects to the pineal gland, which is in the center of the brain. It uses, I believe it's the second most blood flow from the aorta. So if you understand anatomy and physiology, the heart pumps, and on the back of the heart is this thing called an aorta. And the aorta is what distributes blood flow to the rest of your body, including your brain. And this little pineal gland takes a lot of blood flow. Now, when I started to learn about this and my growth in the introduction of higher dimensions and consciousness into my awareness, like Lao Tzu was talking about, I was like, what is this? Why do we call it the third eye? I always question. I'm always asking. I'm like that 3-year-old in the back seat. Why? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And I just was like, why is it called the third eye? And a lot of people would say, oh, that's what we call it. But, if you go deeper, it's actually the same makeup as our physical eyes. It's just in the center of our brain, which also aligns to the crown chakra and the third eye. So it's like this pathway through our brain, and it actually it's surrounded in liquid. It has the same tissue like a cornea, and it looks like a little almond, so it actually has an eye shaped, and so that's where, from history past, many philosophers and gurus have referred to it as the third eye. So I realized that I was only seeing life in front of me with my 2 physical eyes, and my third eye, getting all those years of sleep out of my third eye to wake up. That's where I started to realize, no, I'm not gone crazy. I'm not schizophrenic. That my brother's energy, my brother's lives, my brother's memories, my brother's loves, my father-in-law's memories, his love, his consciousness lives on. And that's where I started to say, there is something to this. Now, Eckhart Tolle goes on to explain, life will give you whatever experience is the most helpful for the evolution of your consciousness. I just didn't realize at the time that I had different plans, and life said, well, yeah, that's great, but we're going to put you on this path. And I didn't realize that my experiences, even though tragic, and even though, I had to work through years of, healing and understanding and forgiveness, it was giving me these experiences to be able to talk with you today on Inspired Living, to share these, to do my lecture at the expo that I just did this last week. And it's the first time I've been out in public, in person. And it was just amazing to actually talk about the topic, and the lecture was called "Just Because We Don't See It Doesn't Mean It's Not There." Because science, physics, consciousness teaches us and tells us that there's a world that we don't see, beyond our physical two eyes. You can think of, the microscope. You can think of the telescope. You can think of Wi-Fi and technology. You can think of radio waves. You can think of television waves. You can think of gravity. These are all things that we don't see. We can think of rainbows. We see rainbows at certain times, but it's only when a light is refracted that we see the 7 colors of the rainbow. But those colors, if you think about it, are around us all the time. But it's what we're seeing with our physical eye. So I always remind my listeners and my students, don't always trust what the eye is telling you. Move into your consciousness, move into your discernment, move into your intuition. So I'm just going to read a little bit about consciousness explained or described, and this is one perspective. And then we'll take our second break, and then when we come back, we're going to actually move in I'll share today with you 5 things to understand about how meditation affects your consciousness or our consciousness, because we really are one. We're just, we're all walking each other home at the end of the day, and where meditation can take you. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about empathy. But just for the sake of time, I can't believe this show is going so quick. Jeez. Consciousness is an unusual phenomenon to study scientifically. It's defined as a subjective first-person phenomenon, and science is an objective third-person endeavor. So this misalignment between the means, science, and the end, explaining consciousness, it gives rise to what becomes a very productive workaround. And the search for what we call neural correlates of consciousness, also known as NCCs, science can sidestep trying to explain consciousness and instead focus on characterizing the kinds of neural activity that are reliable correlated with consciousness. However, while we have learned a lot about consciousness in the bargain, the NCC approach was not originally intended to be a foundation for true explanation of consciousness. So again, even from institutions and famous professors, they talk about how consciousness can be very subjective and first person, because a lot of people talk about their first person phenomenon, where science really does try to be objective in a third person endeavor. It's kind of like when you have your own vision, people call you insane, but if other people have about it and write about it and you read about it, they call that religion. So, 2 different perspectives. So we're going to go to our second break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about 5 things that meditation can do to benefit your life and help you go deeper on your spiritual journey to align to transformations, healing, and most importantly, inspiration. We'll be right back here on Inspired Living Radio.
The future of internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
One planet, 7.3 billion people, only one you. Life offers us many opportunities and learning experiences. Are you ready to explore and discover this beautiful planet, the life and energy all around us, the spiritual world, and what is unseen, along with your own personal soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, is the spiritual connection you have been prospecting for. Internationally known as a tested and professional clairvoyant medium and spiritual advisor, Marc's work as a metaphysical teacher, medical instructor, radio show host, inspirational writer, and hiking guide are here to help you on a journey of self-discovery, healing, inspiration, education, and a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. Dare to dream. Dare to explore. Dare to live. For more information on Marc's spiritual practice in Seattle, Washington, please visit marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer
break because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time
landing a job and getting back on his feet.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
All right. Welcome back to Inspired Living. I'm your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. So now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of today's episode, where we're talking about not only the origin of consciousness, we're looking and exploring and prospecting such terms as visualization, manifestation, meditation. And what I wanted to talk about, again, the origin of consciousness is a very interesting topic to try to talk about and try to put it into layman's terms, so where it took me years to even just have an understanding to even talk about it. But how can we, in terms of a neural aspect of our brain, how can we account in terms of what consciousness is, and do the work that, there's a lot of theories out there, and in a theory, what it's supposed to do is explain consciousness. So to be fair, the answer is that I cannot explain consciousness. In fact, most modern accounts of consciousness don't pretend to. In fact, it's thus more here challenging whether or not any modern accounts of consciousness are in fact theories at all. Instead, we tend to argue and debate and philosophize about competing laws of consciousness and how they describe what they can explain, just as Newton described gravity long before a true explanation was ever offered. So imagine being Newton and the apple hits you in the head and you start talking about there's this theory of gravity. I don't even know where he came up with that term gravity, but I'm sure there was great debate, the experts of their time and the pundits of their time to say that's just a theory, and we lay out our arguments using a variety of modern accounts as examples, and then we go on to argue that at least one modern account of consciousness or theory goes beyond describing what we call this conscious related brain activity, and that qualifies as an exploratory theory. But really, it's about your journey. It's about how do you want to expand your consciousness and understand yourself and the world around you. Now, there's a course that I teach called the PEMS, and if you start to look at yourself, and we're going to get right now into the meat and potatoes of this, if you start to look at yourself more than just a physical being working a 9-to-5 job to buy stuff you can't take with you anyway, and you start to realize that you're a spiritual, energetic being first that incarnated into physical form. So remember, before you incarnated, you were actually in the womb breathing liquid. You came out of the womb, thanks, Mom, and started breathing air. So just as a caterpillar makes its metamorphosis and transformation through the cocoon into a beautiful butterfly, the perspective of a caterpillar is much different than that of a butterfly. So I always say it's really hard for those of you that are listening to the show that if you've had a shaking that's caused the awakening and you've started to morph into this butterfly, this awakening, it's really hard to have butterflies speak with caterpillar people. No judgment, no opinion. They're not, better or less than you. It's just your experiences have transformed. And a lot of times when people go through a spiritual awakening or working through grief and death and dying, they change. And it's like being unplugged from the matrix. You don't get to be plugged back in. Once you're awake, you're awake. Trust me, I've tried several times on my journey. But I'm going to go back to what Thich Nhat Hanh said. In our consciousness, there are many negative seeds, and there are also many positive seeds. The practice The practice is to avoid watering those negative seeds. Recall those negative thoughts, and that's what he was talking about. And we want to identify and water the positive seeds every day. So, an example, instead of me watering the seeds of, the death and dying, the murder of my brother, just the horrible energy around that, or watching my brother pass from brain cancer, instead of focusing and watering those negative seeds, I've turned those stories and those tragedies into triumphs, to talk about that, to talk that their lives and their love and their energy lives on, just like that energy, like I said, that's in your heart. That same energy when you're in the womb breathing liquid is the same energy of when you're breathing air. And eventually, instead of breathing liquid or air, you're going to breathe nothing. You're going to be spiritually conscious. You're going to, become part of source. You're going to return to what you may define as heaven or hell, or, I call it the summerland or the afterlife or life beyond this one. But as Joseph Murphy reminds us, just keep your conscious mind busy with the expectation of the best. I always teach on always focus on the good that's coming your way, because we're really great as humans. Misery loves company and focusing on the negative things. But I love that quote from Joseph Murphy. Just keep your consciousness mind busy with expectation of the best, because it really does change your mindset. So consciousness is not mind. It is the ground of all of our being, the ground of both matter and mind. So when you start to look at consciousness as a bigger thing versus this place that you try to go, or this concept, or this dimensional awareness that you're trying to become aware of, matter and mind are both possibilities of consciousness. So by making you, in a very real sense, more conscious of the world around you, and I know some of us, with everything that's going on, we would, ignorance is bliss. I get that. There's a lot going on in our world. But also I see, and if you followed my shows, you know that I've talked about the conflicts that are coming, from culture wars to civil wars to, yes, even a world war. But I also see the hope and the great coming together that's going to happen through this transformation. So for those of you that follow Deepak Chopra, he talked about great global transformation. I'm talking the global scale. I'm not talking here in Washington State, here in Seattle, Washington. I'm not talking, somewhere over in England or down in Australia. I'm talking about the global transformation. And global transformation is only achieved, and it's preceded by great global chaos, which we know from our history, from mankind. Humans are not always a peaceful species. In fact, very filled with ego and greed and narcissism and pride and wanting to control the world. And we're going to learn through that as we start to move in correlation and a symbiotic relationship with both nature and Mother Earth. We just celebrated Earth Day, so happy Earth Day. It comes one day after my birthday. So I'm in between two great holidays. 420, for those of you that follow the 420 holiday, you know what I'm talking. For those of you that follow the 422 holiday, Earth Day, you know what I'm talking about. My day falls in right between the trifecta on the 21st. So, I always make fun of that and just make light of that. But it really is about, by making you, in a very real sense, more conscious of the world and focusing on the good, not so much the bad, because we're really good at doing that. Meditation does many things. Like I said, it heightens your awareness, it deepens your thought levels. It can literally boost your sensory perception, increase stimuli processing capability. Science teaches that through the foundation I was just talking about, the consciousness from the Neuroscience of Consciousness Institute that I follow at Oxford Academic. Just even being tested. I've been tested several times through biofeedback on meditation at the college in England. I'll be probably tested again later this year to see the brain waves and the brain patterns and how meditation works and how prayer works and how listening works and how yelling works. And so it's been very much a journey, a scientific exploration, and that's what I love about spiritualism, is it works with science. So again, taking these first-person subjective experiences and working with science from an objective third-person perspective to understand that we are pretty amazing beings. So, not to mention just the limitless number of other emotional, psychological, and physical benefits that can come from meditation. Now, I always go back to Buddha because people will bring up the Buddha reference. And when the Buddha was asked, what did you gain from meditation? He said, nothing. But let me tell you what I did gain. I gained nothing, but I lost the fear of dying, the fear of death, anxiety, depression, doubt. So these are the things that the Buddha was talking about. So here are 5 things And you can get these tips through your Positive Living app through Alexa. Just say, Alexa, open up Positive Living. Here are the 5 things that I recorded to help you with your journey. Meditation teaches you to live in the present. And if we just had an awesome guest on a couple episodes back, John Perkis, who has a book titled "Learn to Let Go," and it's the follow-up to The Power of Letting Go. So I definitely recommend that. I've got it. I've received a lot of information about it with my journey, and I've even asked to talk about it, even in my day job. So that was kind of interesting. But there are 4 stages to letting go, and part of this to move into your meditation and the 4 stages of letting go. And again, this is a reference to his book, Learning to Let Go. Is be present and enjoy each moment. How do you become present? Through the power of breath. So everybody take a nice deep breath in. Just become aware of your thoughts and your mind and your breath. This is a great way to move into what I like to call the magic in the moment. So let go of thoughts that keep you stuck. So you can just, if you have a thought, just tell the thought to go away. Just like see it like smoke and mist or steam and just float away. Let go of the pain that runs your life. So don't let the ego try to take you to the past of what you didn't do or what you should be doing. And surrender and tune into something far more intelligent than your brain. And what he was talking about there, surrendering to it, is not the same. Letting go is not the same as giving up. So just want to be clear on that. So take another nice deep breath in. And just notice how your thoughts aren't as powerful as they were when you started, listening to this show. And if you do a series of breaths, breathing in through your nose, exhaling out through the mouth, it does calm the nervous system. And the nervous system is always in a state of fight or flight. We want to move into homeostasis. And like I said, with the stuff that's going on in our society and the conscious world around us, this is a great way to turn that off for a little bit and to move away from all the divide, all the conflict, all the violence, all the mass shootings that's out there and go, I'm not going to think about that. I'm going to move into what Mark talks about, the magic in the moment. And meditation teaches you to live in the present moment. So that's why it's so beneficial to start a meditation practice. I usually recommend in the bathroom because it's a place of privacy and you're not going to be disturbed. I also recommend turning off any peripherals, technology, because Murphy's Law, you will get disrupted if you try to move into a state of just meditating, working on your breath, what your thoughts are. And with that, have you ever witnessed something magnificent while others observing the same thing completely miss it? It's because you're in tune, you're aware, you're in the moment. Other people completely miss it. It happened to be that you were, completely aware of what was going on because you started to meditate and to live in the moment while the other person was simply not present. It really is just a matter of who's present and who's not. This lack of awareness is how most people live their lives around us, and that can be very frustrating because there are just many people that just go about their day like a horse with blinders, and they just plow their lane, stay in their lane, and then there's other of us that, are, of seeing everything and experiencing everything. So the solution to this is to become more aware and consciousness of what is going on around you, things you may have previously ignored. And meditation is the key to unlocking this magnificent new awareness. Remember, awareness is the greatest agent for change. Number 2, under all of the mind's noise is a quiet place. So by training your mind in meditation to be highly consciousness of just one thing, such as a deep, controlled breathing, great things begin to happen. You may say, like what? The mind becomes more tame. The mind chatter slows to a halt. An incredible new mindful awareness will permeate your day and your day-to-day activities. A tranquil mind is a recipe for a happy and full life. It can also bring a lot of different creative focus into your journey. So the mind is constantly and compulsively churning. Constant thoughts and chatter fill the mind, and the more you feed the chatter, the louder it becomes. The mind seems to always want more. It is always looking to grasp something that is out there. Most people live their lives with an outward focus, yet they neglect the rich world that exists within. By constantly identifying with the mind's chatter, relentlessness and boredom are the results. The solution is to become fully conscious of your mind through meditation and a meditation practice, taking time every day to enjoy the silence and the stillness within. Harnessing and focusing the mind changes everything. Would you like to have incredible control over your emotions and feelings? Something that the majority of people in the world lack? If you don't believe me, just take a look around the world and you can see it firsthand. By meditating consistently, you will find that you are in the true authority over your thoughts and impulses. It will become clear that you are not your mind and you are not your thoughts. You don't need to believe everything you're thinking. There are tools for you to use, not the other way around. The concept of self-releases, followed by a deeper understanding of the mind, is how it functions. And once you experience this knowing, an enlightened state of consciousness is sure to follow. Last but not least, meditation affects the consciousness in a scientifically measurable way. While scientists do not yet fully understand the true origin of consciousness, many agree that it can be measured within the brainwave patterns of the individual, myself included. So, meditation. Start your practice. I always remind my listeners, my students, take the time to disconnect so you can make that time to reconnect. So these are just some things about consciousness, the origin of consciousness, which will remain debatable probably for eternity. But what you can start to do is you can start to tune into your own journey. And again, go back to what Lao Tzu said. The key to growth is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness. So thanks for hanging out with me today. Thanks for listening. Again, make sure to follow us on our social media pages, and you can find Inspired Living through your favorite podcasting platform. Until our next soul adventure together, be kind, caring, and compassionate, and most importantly, dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover that diamond within. Namaste.